Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now I have finally done 100% exploration of variant 8, therefore I do feel comfortable making a completion guide, and we're going to be carrying on with exploration guides. For variant contents, I typically split my exploration guides in 3 parts for chapter 1, 2, and 3. However, before I go any further, I definitely want to advise for majority of the people, if you are watching this as the video gets released, to wait a little bit to see how and when that Venomful fight does get nerfed. Or if you want to push forward, then you can do the first 5 quests and maybe leave the final one till later. At the very least, unless you have a really good counter. Primarily, I think the easiest way to get it done is with Mr. Fantastic Apocalypse and maxed out Despair, or potentially with ramped up Sabertooth. But again, do that at your own discretion. It is more than likely that Venomful fight is going to get changed and made a lot easier. Therefore, I do not recommend rushing through it right now. That being said, first thing that we do need to discuss is the MVPs of this entire enterprise, of this entire variant. So let me pull up Aunt May right here. So we have 20 mercenary champions. And out of these 20 champions, and we can use also Venompool, who is not displayed here, but is definitely one of the MVPs. So I'm gonna focus on Venompool later, but overall, my 3 most used champions and 3 best champions, in my opinion, for exploration, and 3 champions that I pretty much did about 80% of the variant with, is Domino with her full Trinity team. Domino definitely put in a ton of work. There are several lanes that have like heavy assault and things like that where she could absolutely shine, but even in regular lanes, Domino was always one of the champions to go to. Only kind of annoying thing was that Domino doesn't get that healing Deadpool champions do get, but quite frequently I was actually running double Dominos with the Trinity team and then like Venompool, because the second MVP is Massacre. I do have a 6-star rank 2 Massacre, and he put in a ton of work. He's a very great option for several of the boss fights as well as for clearing lanes. And since he is the Deadpool family champion, he also gains that Deadpool Sig ability, which means he can heal throughout all of the fights. And in 3.2 quest, there are some nightmare of invade lanes where he was an absolute MVP. I actually pushed one of those 2 lanes through completely itemless. Then somewhere in the middle of second lane, I was just given up, and I ended up using a couple of revives, but you can definitely do it itemless, 100%. I only used those revives just because I was fed up, and quite frankly, I stopped enjoying myself in that last chapter because some of the parts were just, ugh. Those are the ones that we have to avoid. Right, so those are the 2 of the 3 MVPs. The third MVP is Venompool. Definitely, well, we're gonna bring that up here first. So hide the filters. Venompool, an absolute stud, put in a ton of work and definitely was super useful. And then going back to mercenary champions, there are a couple more champions that, you know, put in quite a lot of work for several people. I personally didn't use Deadpool too much. I only had the 4-star, but even a 4-star or 3-star Deadpool is perfectly viable option due to the stat boosts. And if you have any version of Deadpool at all, he's a fairly solid pick for a lot of lanes as well, with really impressive regeneration abilities. And then occasionally I did end up using Black Widow Deadly Origins. There are some shock vulnerability lanes as well. And Nebula put in work here and there also. Worthwhile noting that I do not have highly ranked Gwenpool and Hitmonkey. Otherwise, I possibly would have used them slightly more. But yeah, so my MVPs effectively were Domino, Massacre, and Venompool. Right. Let's finally get to the quick parts. So quest 1.1 in completion. It's fairly straightforward. We're not going to spend much time here at all. I think the best path to go here is this Pessimist, Physical Resistance, Shifting Immunity, Bleed and Poison lane, because that's the only lane where you do not have to deal with increased power gain. Increased power gain lanes is pretty much the theme of this variant, and it was disgusting. It's especially painful because mercenary champions, maybe aside from Nebula, pretty much have no power control abilities, and even with Nebula, you don't really want to use that. So Power gain was spammed everywhere, and any path where you could avoid that was pretty much a win. So here we have Pessimist, Physical Resistance, Shifting Immunities. Alternatively, if you have fairly stacked team with you, you can choose Flare, Empowered Immunity, and Immune to Poison, Immune to Shock Lane. This path can also be done quite well, but note Hitmonkey is there, and Hitmonkey is a pain to fight with mercenary champions, so you definitely want to be using Venom Pool against that Hitmonkey because he's the only non-mercenary champion that you can bring in there. But if you pick the path that I first suggested, then you have Mojo and Human Torch. Be aware of those, and then Electro at the end. But Electro is not as painful because of the healing abilities that you get. As far as it goes for the boss, we have the Life Cycle and we have Arc Overload. You can kind of take it with everyone. He does have a huge regeneration ability once he would be knocked out, but then he starts degenerating quite rapidly as well. So keep that in mind. It took me by surprise, but other than that, I'm quite sure that you can use pretty much majority of the champions. He's not that finicky, that hard. I do hear that there is some bug with him, but I did not experience myself, so I'm not too well versed about the issue there. Let's move on to 1.2. And here, the easy path is fairly straightforward. It's only 4 fights, really. So you want to go here to this Superior Iron Man. And why it is made easy is because of this Science Adaptoid. Because once you beat it with the champion that you have beaten this Adaptoid, you start stacking poisons whenever you're close to the opponent. And this lane has Armor Break Immunity, Heal or Hide, and Poison Vulnerability. You can use the Heal or Hide to heal up yourself. There's no downside to that if you need it. And thanks to Poison Vulnerability and you applying poisons by standing close to the opponent, you can just do 200% increased damage. And also the fights that aren't that hard. So we have Superior Iron Man, Black Panther Civil War, which, you know, is not too bad. And then Nightcrawler, which can be annoying, but you can just like parry heavy him and you will be fine. As for Deadpool X4's boss, he is bugged. By this text, he shouldn't be throwing special attacks, but he is throwing special 3. He's not throwing specials 1 or 2. Now, I soloed him a couple of times with Nebula, that huge burst of shock. That was one of the most viable options. Alternatively, I always end up using Domino and or Massacre. First fight, I took him down to like 30% or 40% or something, and then I went in with the second champion and finished him off. Keep in mind that, yeah, even though he's bugged, even though you will likely eat at level 3, it doesn't mean that you end up using items or revives. It just means that you need to bring in a second champion. And luckily, you have 5 champion slots, and you can just bring in one of the other champions to finish it. All in all, he was fairly straightforward boss, even with the bug. It was just the fact that one champion got KO'd, then you bring in the second one and finish it off. Hopefully, they do fix and address that issue. It's just another thing that you do need to be aware of as you are doing the variant completion run. Right, path number 3. And here the easy lane is fairly straightforward. This is this evasive maneuvers and counter-strike. Now, by beating this Adaptoid, you will have the ability to be unblockable, or else they are above 50%. So that is kind of helpful, but it's not the biggest of deals. But in general, you just want to go here, evasive maneuvers, counter-strike. So you can play it in 2 different ways. Number 1, you can use somebody like Massacre or somebody else who does not necessarily need to knock down the opponents, like Black Widow, Deadly Origins, Massacre, so on and so forth. And yeah, just don't knock them down. You never have to deal with it, evasive maneuvers. The other option is when you bring in a full Domino Trinity, you know, the parry stun lasts forever and you can basically just ignore the node anyways, or just as widely, you can use Karnak, for instance, and counter the evade. All in all, I think that was the most straightforward lane. Another decent alternative is this 50% energized backwards brawler enhanced special 2 lane. There's also not much to it. It's kind of up to you to decide which champions you'd rather go up against, whether it's Thing and Vision Arcus or it's Warlock and Blade, because with Blade, you know, with 50% increased power gain, unblockable special 2, it can get a bit dicey, and Warlock obviously can be a bit of a pain. So those middle 2 lanes are definitely the ones that you want to focus on. When it comes to the boss here, then it's just a Spider-Man with Limber. I beat him with Karnak, I beat him with Venom Pull. and I beat him with Domino Trinity, so you can take your pick. I'm sure like Hitmonkey and plenty of other champions also work well. He will have his await abilities active for majority of the time. Domino, obviously with Massacre Synergy, can bypass that Limber, and then Karnak can prevent them from awaiting, and so can Venompool. So that definitely the better options there. I might be missing out somebody, but those are the champions that I used, and those are the champions that I recommend. Right, let's move on to the next quest, quest number 2.2, so 4th quest in the variant. We do want to speed through this. I don't want to keep you guys forever. And this quest is quite unique in the sense that you can get 3 pre-fight abilities before you actually get on your lanes by fighting those different Deadpooloids. And you can mix match however you want the abilities, you know, whichever Deadpooloids you do want to beat. And then I do recommend just going to this Breakthrough Turtling lane. Reason for that is with Breakthrough, any champion can end up hitting like an absolute tank. And you only really need to defeat that Namor, Stealth Suit Spider-Man, and then Mangog. Mangog's a bit trickier, but in general, they're really not that bad of a fight. And you only have 3 fights to get to the boss after those easy Deadpooloid fights. So that is definitely the path that I recommend going with. Alternative here, I think, is fairly decent as well with this one, where you also have only 3 lanes. It has Oscillate, Return to Sender, Shock 1, and Powerful from Afar. And I showcased, I actually did this with like a 4-star Deadpool. You can just run through entire lane with a 4-star Deadpool or like Massacre or whoever. You just need to be fairly aggressive, and that's about it. So those would be the easiest lanes because you can get plenty of pre-fights. If you are very good at with re-parry, this lane's actually quite a lot of fun as well with Stun Vulnerability and Mighty Charge. Mighty Charge is an annoying, but Stun Vulnerability, if you are good with re-parry, will net you quite decent amount of extra damage. And if you play Domino heavy game, it can work out. It can work out quite well. Right, let's move on to final 2 quests. I didn't even talk about the boss, but the boss can be dealt with anyone there. Sorry about that. Old Man Logan is pretty much the most straightforward boss to go up against. He does have that Conflictor node, which will purify, which is basically masochism instead of healing, giving them power. So you need to be aware of that. But since it's Old Man Logan, he doesn't have any other extra power gain. This node actually can be quite helpful to you by pushing him past bars of power and you not having to like try and parry or find alternative openings. Because the only thing that is difficult about this fight is Vigorous Assault. He starts the fight unblockable, and every time, all the time he has his regeneration buff active, he is going to be unblockable. But whenever he uses his special attack, he gets rid of that regeneration, plus that Conflictor node. If you inflict any debuff on him, he gains some extra power. The fight is fairly basic, fairly straightforward. You just need to be aware of when that unblockable triggers. You can use virtually any champion there and get it done. It's a fight that you have to fight much more than your champions have to be able to counter. Right, next up, She-Hulk. She-Hulk is arguably one of the easiest bosses. You can virtually use any champion on She-Hulk, so I'm not even going to cover her. But the easy lane, in my opinion, is this one. Bulk Up, Heavy Assault, Fight or Flight. So if you have Domino Trinity, you're going to have some very good results. Same with Massacre and spamming his heavy attacks if you have Incinerates on. So Bulk Up, Heavy Assault, Fight or Flight. Only Hyperion there can be somewhat annoying. And other than that, we have Iceman. But if you have like a maxed out 5-star level champion that is on Deadpool family, then Iceman is not much to worry about either, because you're just going to regenerate afterwards. I think I lost about 40% of health on my Venompool or Massacre, and then I ended up regenerating the rest of it back, so it wasn't too bad. If you do not think you're going to be able to deal with that Iceman, then we have this Flare highly flammable lane, which is an absolute treat for Domino, because you get 300% increase in attack, and then you have 200% more damage on the heavy attacks thanks to highly flammable. There's Flux Dispersal, but spamming parry heavy, you know, you're gonna absolutely whiz through. So that is for Domino. That is a definite Domino lane here. And this one, ideally Domino Massacre as well. They are kind of like the best options for either one of these 2 parts. And then take your pick from there. Right. And again, boss fight is super easy. Now the final quest, and the final quest is actually a major pain in the ass, I'm not gonna lie. There were some very annoying fights before that I didn't talk about, like Havoc or Penny Parker on Selective Time Stream, and it was like very frustrating. Havoc and few other fights definitely that kind of really annoyed me. But these two lanes are just so frustrating. There's 200% power gain and invade. Massacre was the best option, but don't do that. Don't do these lanes. If you want the easiest time, do either one of these. If you have Domino Trinity, then Domino with Trinity can push here relatively easy. Pressure Gauge makes it annoying. Sometimes you will have to, you know, parry twice or take a few hits on a block. But thanks to Life Transfer and Domino Spamming Heavy Attacks, that worked out for me. But if you do not have strong Domino Trinity, then I definitely 100% recommend going here. And we have the Rising Sun, 50% Energize, and Selectively Special 1. Selectively Special 1 means they can only use Special 1s, which actually makes the fights easier. You don't need to worry about pushing them to level 3, or several of those champions have harder to wait level 2s and things like that. So this is the path that I recommend for most of the people. Rising Sun, just weave in heavy attack here and there, and 50% power gain, still a lot less power gain than we see most of the other places. So yeah, this Rising Sun lane is in general the easiest. With a good Domino team, this was fairly straightforward too. Right, don't go to the right side, and when it comes to the boss, we all probably heard by now how big of a nightmare this boss is. Again, the best option in my opinion is Mr. Fantastic Apocalypse, Despair Mastery. But make sure that if you bring only one Mr. Fantastic with you, then if you do mess up, you basically have to redo the entire path because you will not have enough pre-fights. That is the biggest thing there. Don't mess up or redo the path. Then we have Sabertooth with Killmonger synergy that you can definitely try and utilize. But if you're doing Sabertooth with Killmonger synergy, you probably want to go on the right side though, just so you get the pre-fight from this guy to be able to stack those poisons active. And then obviously whatever other alternative options you have seen. But still, unless you're doing one of those two options, I think I'd probably say wait. Unless you do have everything that's needed, unless you're super confident, do not complete this quest. Right, that is it. Went over MEPs, fair amount of warnings, easiest path. I think your completion guide is done, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information